Problem number one, first thing that I do is I look at my answer choices here, and then I take a look at my sentence. Okay, this particular one, we're going to go ahead and just start with the sentence here. I notice there's a comma here. Remember, trace in your commas. So here's a comma after 1922, and then I see this. I see that word, and. So right away, that tells me that that is one of the movies, Hypnotizing the Chupacabra. If you haven't seen it, it's Fanboys, okay? So Fanboys tells me that when you have the word and a comma before that, you're going to have two independent clauses, all right? One before, and then you're going to have your and then on the back end, you're also going to have an independent clause. Now, this is awesome for us because what's going to happen is we're going to be able to prune out stuff here, okay? You're going to notice this sentence is really super long. It starts up here at architect and goes all the way down. Right away, I know I'm going to use the pruning technique. If you got problem number one wrong, we're going to use pruning, okay? So let's trace in the commas. We traced in the comma here after 1922. Now look at the rest of the sentence, okay? There's no commas or punctuation in the answers. However, there's one over here, okay? Now let's go ahead and read. Architect Paul Revere Williams opened his own firm in 1922. That's an independent clause like we saw with Fanboys. So what do? Let's cross it off because that's not really part of the sentence that's in question. Now, pruning tells us that when we do that, we can shorten up the sentence and make it easier to understand. We can actually just use our ears to see what's better, okay? Now, what I do is I simply just put my finger over the word and, okay? Or almost kind of like hide it, and then I just read the rest of the sentence. His vision and willingness to experiment led to a successful 50-year career, okay? Now, when I stop reading there, the reason I do is because here's a mummy wedge, okay, of planning buildings. I can go ahead and cross that out, pruning technique. Why? Because that's a mummy wedge. Mummy wedge presents information that's non-essential, okay? There's a comma here. Now I just simply read and label this, okay? Primarily near Los Angeles. That's a dependent clause, so that can be crossed out as well. Let's review. In this sentence so far, what we did is, since we saw that comma after 1922, independent clause, that's not part of what they're asking us to do. So we can cross that out. Now, once we know that, we know we have to have an independent clause on the back end. We got rid of a mummy wedge and a dependent clause. The gist of this question here is asking us about the back end of the independent clause here in the Fanboys. Now, plug in your answers. We come over here, we just simply start reading from his vision. His vision and willingness to experiment led to a successful 50-year career. That's an independent clause. Answer choice A sounds good. Let's put a dot by it. Okay, let's plug in answer choice B. Led to. His vision and willingness to experiment led to a successful 50-year career. That also sounds good as well. However, lead here is lead. It's a lead metal. That's not what they're trying to talk about. Okay, once we get rid of that, we can get rid of D as well. Now you'll see that answer choice A and C, the difference here is T-O-O-O or T-O. The best answer here, answer choice A. Kids, problem number 2 is a Formula B question. What we're going to do is we're going to add this sentence right here in the underlined portion. And so keep in mind there's a comma right here. That means abandoned boxcar. This is going to be a mini definition of the word that comes right before it. Buildings, 3,000 of them, all right? Hotels, government, those are the buildings. So the correct answer on this, we're going to use abandoned boxcar, mini definition after the comma. G is the correct answer. Problem number 3, we're going to use the pruning technique. Pruning means to cut out dependent clauses on the front, the back, or in the middle, or mummy wedges. Here it is, mummy wedge. Mummy wedge presents non-essential information and separates the noun from the verb, all right? Of his most interesting designs can be crossed out. That's non-essential information. Now, you read the sentence and it's shorter. One were in Las Vegas, okay? So that's out. One and were, those are not matching. One is singular, so A and C are out. One have stood or one stood in Las Vegas. One have stood in Las Vegas or one stood. D, prune, 3. Problem number 4, keep in mind that we pruned in problem number 3, so we're going to get that out of there, and then we're going to put in stood. Okay, so just put stood there. Okay, then if you look over here, this dot comma means that you have to have two independent clauses. Okay, the second, we already know that one stood in Las Vegas is independent. Okay, so that means that the first part is independent. A dot comma presents two independents separated by a dot comma. All right, the La Concha Hotel, that doesn't make any sense. No changes out. Namely, the La Concha Hotel, that doesn't make any sense. And then one stood in Las Vegas, the La Concha Hotel, okay? Just reading it off. Or if you use a Mr. Chung one dash is going to be like one comma, which defines the word right before it, which is in Las Vegas. This is giving you more information about in Las Vegas. The correct answer, Mr. Chung style, answer choice H. Remember, one dash is the same as one comma because Mr. Chung says dashes, commas, and brackets all do the same thing. So if we've got double commas, that's the same as double dashes. Furthermore, one comma is the same as one dash, Mr. Chung. Problem number 5, the correct answer here is going to be answer choice A, using the razor blade. Simple is best. All this extra stuff here is non-essential. You don't need it. It's redundant. A, razor blade for problem number 5. Going down, taking a look at problem number 6. Problem number 6 down over here, you see that we have the word it. That's a hazy pronoun, okay? And then we're going to use something called the candy list rule. Candy list rule. Candy list rule says that the number one thing in a sentence, the most important, usually is going to be brought up first. If you look back up here, you're going to see that we're talking about this William character. So the better answer choice is going to present the noun that's relevant in the very beginning. Here, answer choice H presents the most important noun, William, that goes back up here. First noun, usually the one that's going to be more important. So answer choice H for 6, using the candy list rule. My favorite technique is the pruning technique here. If you take a look at problem number 7, you're going to see that we have a comma over here, all right? First thing we want to do is let's read up to this comma and label it. Envisioning a motel that combines name La Concha with, which translates to shell, cross that out, with the arched roof typically of Google architects. Okay, you've got to be able to label that independent or dependent, okay? If you're having trouble, start pruning this stuff out, okay? So you see that that's a mummy wedge, that can be out. That's Mr. Chung, that can be out as well. Here is with, that's a mummy wedge, so that can be all knocked out. Envisioning a motel that combined the name La Concha, okay? So you see right away that this is a dependent clause. Now, see, we pruned all that out. Now, we know that this is a dependent clause, so that means from here all the way down to the end of the sentence, we have to have a what? Dependent clause? Nope, an independence, all right? Remember, answer choice H starts with William. That's what we chose for 6. So William designed a lobby that was meant to appear, okay, all the way to the end of the thing, okay? If we put in our comma here and we take a look at answer choice B, B has got a comma here and here. That's Mr. Chung. So if we put a comma in here, that means that we could cross that out and we still have to have an independent. So let's read it. William designed a lobby that was meant to appear like a giant shell. B is the correct answer. Remember, you just used Mr. Chung here, crossing this out, and then we pruned off all the garbage in the front. 7 is B, using pruning. Even with this garbage here, you're still pruning out Mr. Chung, making it still an independent clause when you're done. 7B. Problem number 8, when I glance at the answers, I notice I've got hazy pronouns in here like them, those, and ones. So I know that the rule is hazy pronouns. G is the correct answer. Now remember, Montezuma's Razor Arrowhead, that movie, tells us we're going to go ahead and make it as simple as possible, yet making sure it's not hazy. So even though this answer choice G is the longest answer choice, we're not going to go with the shorter ones because the shorter ones produce haziness. G is the correct answer, combining razor blade and hazy together. Remember, short and simple, but not hazy. Sometimes that means you're going to choose a longer answer choice. Thinking of razor blade, you look over here in problem number 9. Problem number 9, the correct answer is going to be answer choice A, simple is best. All of this stuff here is non-essential or it's redundant. Answer choice 10, here, 10, J is the correct answer as well, using the razor blade. Problem number 11, they're asking us about a fanboy. So remember, when I glance at my answer choices, I see here's a comma and B and then the word and. Remember, a quick review of fanboys, you're going to have an independent, you'll have a comma, and then right after the comma, there's going to be a fanboys. F-A-N-B-O-Y-S. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Then you're going to have another independent. Remember, fanboys links one comma with two independent clauses, and your fanboys will go there. All right. So here you see there's a fanboys, and here you see that there's a fanboys. So simply just checking the back end here and the front end to see if there's an independent. We're going to have an independent on the front here for sure, but on the back end it says including registration desk. That's a dependent clause, so that doesn't work. So B is out and A is out as well. Now we're left with a comma after here. If you read from the beginning up to the word and, you see that's a dependent, you got a comma, and then now you have another dependent. That violates abandoned boxcar. Abandoned boxcar tells you you have to have an independent somewhere, all right? One comma, there'll be an independent, a dependent, or a dependent and an independent. Here in this case, with one comma, two dependents violates that. Fanboys and abandoned boxcar 11C. Problem number 12, when I glance down here at 12, I look at the answer choices, I see right away it's these words, pirate flag. So what we have to do is look at the answer choices, then label them T together or O opposite. The word here, no changes, indeed, that's going to be together. That means the sentence before and the sentence after are going to go in the same direction with the good stinky rule. Although is opposite, that means the two sentences will be opposite good stinky rule here. Later, that's going to be T, time related, together, and then yet that's going to be opposite. All right, now what we do here is we look and label this good stinky rule. Looks like the motel was torn down. That's negative. And now this is an unusual one. We'll have to flip the page back to page 3 and look at the last sentence on the previous paragraph. Open space function as a social gathering. Social gathering is positive, so you see positive going to negative, that's going to be opposite. We cross out F together and later, which is together as well. Plug in although and yet. See that the correct answer sounds a little bit better with the word although. Structural clues, problem number 12, G. Problem number 13, first thing that I do is I look and I see we've got a bunch of commas in here. So I'm going to trace in the commas and then label it independent or dependent. Okay. First thing I do is I'll just take a look at answer choice A. All right. A, there's a comma here, a comma here. All right. So let's read from the beginning of the sentence. Preservation groups saved it from demolition. That's an independent clause. Also, you're going to notice that there's the word and there. So this is a fanboys. That means that the back end is also going to have to be an independent clause as well. Okay, here's a comma in 2016. Okay, tracing that comma. And then now let's label this part here, the lobby, all the way here to pieces. The lobby was moved across town in pieces. That's an independent clause. It's segregated here with our fanboys, and then this is a Mr. Chung. You can cross that out. That's going to be the answer here. So what you see here is we've got an independent, a comma with our fanboys, okay? And then here we have in 2016, which is going to be our Mr. Chung crossout, and then you've got an independent. Just think of it as kind of like a train engine. 13 is going to be answer choice A. Problem number 14 here, this is an anti-razor blade. So given the choices are true and accurate, which one provides the most relevant information at this point? Well, relevant information, so where are we? This is our relevant information at this point. So right away, I look over here, it looks like we're dealing with this motel, okay? And then down over here, it says that there's neon signs that are displaying the ad on it, okay? So our relevant information is going to be anti-razor blade. It's going to give us the most specific information about the motel and the neon sign, okay? So which one of them gives you the most information about that, okay? So here is very specific information about the motel, and here's the sign, because the sign is going to be neon sign, the correct answer here, 14, using anti-razor blade, G. Problem number 15 is a Formula B rearranger. So in this particular problem here, we are going to add this sentence and we're going to put it in a place that makes the most logical sense. So here's beneath each of these three arches was a glass wall with door openings into the motel. So what I did is I just said, okay, where did they talk about door openings into the motel? And then I just went back in, spot checked the information where they talked about that, and just started looking at my answer choices, okay? So if you go over and see where do they talk about the structure of the actual hotel, all right? So I just zap back over here, and here it is right here in C. It says inside the lobby, which is a place for gathering, large open space, functional social gathering. So here it talks about the lobby and the open space. So that would make the most sense when we talk about opening into the motel. The correct answer on this one for problem number 15 is going to be answer choice C. Problem number 16, what we're going to do is just basically match our answer choices here. So here we have octopus, octopuses, octopus. The name of the passage is octopi. It's plural, so the correct answer on this one is going to be answer choice G for problem number 16. Problem number 17, we're going to use that same logic. Here we're looking for opening or open. Here it says navigating, so we're going to just match that. ING, C, match, match, 16, 17. Problem number 18, we're dealing with what's called the ITS rule. It's, first of all, IT apostrophe S, that means it is. So for both of these answer choices, we're going to go ahead and read it and see if it sounds right. It says it's anatomically siphoned, propels, a pill bottle, crossed, it is tank. Okay, right away, both of those can be out. It's not, it is. All right, then it's either across its tank or crossed its tank. Just use your ears, plug them in, see what the one that sounds the best. It's going to be across. 18, get rid of these. It's ITS, it's rule 18G. Problem number 19, we're going to use the candy list rule. If you look at your answer choices A, B, C, and D, we're going to underline the first word, which is a noun, octopus, octopuses, basis, and actions. And then we're going to see which one of those words is the most relevant. So first thing you want to do is you would go up here and you would look and see what the main subject is. Here it looks like we're dealing with octopus. And then down over here in the next paragraph, it looks like we're talking about octopus. All right, the title also talked about octopus. Candy list rule says the most important thing will come first. That tells you A and B are going to be out right away. Then you just look over here, it's C and D, and now you just read them and see which one sounds a little bit better. Here, this makes the most sense. Answer choice D, using your ears. It's actions. It's referring back to the octopus, and the octopus owns its own actions. ITS, it's animal or an object, singular with possession, 19D. Problem 20, when you glance at the answer choices, you see we're dealing with apostrophe S's in answer choice G and answer choice H. That's the PUPS rule. PUPS rule tells you that when we have an apostrophe on the outside of the word, that means it's plural possessive, and on the inside to the left of the S is singular possessive. Then what comes to the right is the thing that it is possessing. All right, so first thing you want to do, here's our animals right here. Do animals own or possess their own cognitive development? The answer is yes, so we do need an apostrophe. That means answer choice F can be crossed out. There's just plural animals with no possession. Answer choice J is out. No possession there either. So what we need to do now is we need to figure out if it's one animal or multiple animals. Okay, when we come back over here, you see that it's octopus, singular. So octopus, singular, is going to go with answer choice H. PUPS rule for 20. Problem 21, number one rule on the ACT mechanics and usage, for the most part, is razor blade. Simple is best. Short answer choices, you don't need to be super specific. You don't need to be redundant. You don't need to be really descriptive. So short answer choices are good. 21, razor blade rule. D is the correct answer on that one. All right. 22, if you look at 22, we're thinking razor blade as well for 22. We want short answer choices. Here in 22, it looks like we've got 2 words, the rest of them 4 words, 5 words, and so forth. 22, razor blade for that one as well. Problem number 23, once again, razor blade comes to our rescue. Short, simple stuff. Now, in problem number 24, this is what's called a combo problem. So a combo problem, when you glance at your answer choices, what we want to do is try and figure out what's going on. I come over here, I see right away there's a comma and the word and that tells me that's a fanboys. Fanboys is going to be an independent, there'll be a comma, there'll there'll be a fanboys in the box, and then there'll be another independent clause here. So let's try answer choice G. When you take a look at answer choice G, you're going to see that we have an independent clause, but then here, where there's a comma here, and puzzles researchers have intended for octopuses. All right, that's a dependent clause, so that one doesn't work at all. Answer choice H, if you look over here, if you read all the way up from the beginning of the sentence to and, you're going to see that that's going to be a dependent clause. And then the second part, after the comma, is a dependent that violates abandoned boxcar. Now, if you come over here and you take a look at answer choice J, there's a comma over here after puzzles. So let's check and see if the first part is independent. Yet, this book provided in-depth descriptions of toys and puzzles. That is an independent clause, all right? There's a comma, and now remember, abandoned boxcar tells us if we have a dependent clause on the back end, that should be a mini definition of the word that comes right before that. Here, researchers have intended for octopuses, okay? That is a dependent clause, but whoa, wait a second. According to the theory on abandoned boxcars, that dependent clause should be a mini definition of the word right before it. Is that a mini definition of puzzles? No. There, you have it. You see why abandoned boxcar is going to win in this particular case, 24F. Now, when you look at 25, we're going to check the word delete first because that's razor blade. When you cross this answer choice out here, 4, you're going to see each cube features a different latch the octopuses has to open until the octopuses reaches the small cube. You see that when you choose that, it's still a complete sentence. So razor blade tells us number 1 rule, ACT, mechanics and usage, razor blade for 25. D. Problem number 26, it's a Formula B question. Here, if the writer is going to delete these phrases, okay, and this phrase here from the previous sentence, adjunct to the punctuation, what would you lose? Okay, so let's go ahead and find them. It's just after. Let's go ahead. Here it is. Here. And then we have the other sentence. It says solving. Okay, right here. Now, you will notice that there's a comma right before that clause and a comma right before that clause. Remember, abandoned boxcar, this tells you it's going to give you a miniature definition of the word that's right before it. So typically, and then this is just after a few weeks, is what typically happens. That gives you a mini definition. And solving it, that is solving what? Solving the puzzle. So if you look here, you're going to see that what this does, you're going to go ahead and delete details. It gives you more information about the puzzles, which typically happens. So which one is that? Details and puzzles. Answer choice F for 26. Remember, even though it is a Formula B question, you can still use punctuation stuff like abandoned boxcar. Notice I saw that comma there and that helped me out. If you missed problem number 27, watch careful and see that we have this up here in the beginning of the sentence, not only. So we're just going to match not only with the word but. Not only, but. See how that just adds to what we already have. 27 is a match. Problem number 28, Formula B, anti-razor blade. Which choice offers the most specific information about the method? Okay, so first thing here, 28, here's our underlined portion here. Now, this is the trick. Here it is right here. It's a pirate flag going opposite. Some might use trial and error. So what's the opposite of trial and error? Just basically breaking it. Okay, we're going to break the latch. So that's going to get these answer choices out of here. Strength and cubes, get those out of here. It's either opt to break the larger cubes or ruin the cubes. Answer choice H sounds a little bit better. It's anti-razor blade. Make sure that you see your pirate flag. Problem 29, it's structural clues. First thing you do when you glance at your answer choices, look at these words and label them T together or O opposite. No changes, therefore, that's together. That means the clause before and after have to go in the same direction, or good stinky rule, plus plus, or minus minus. For example, is going to be together as well, and then also answer choice C, when we glance over here to label it, conversely is going to be opposite. Answer choice D is just continuing on with the same thought, which is going to be together. There is no structural clue needed. It's just talking about a continuation of what we just said. All right. So what I do, I come over here, I look at the sentence. While the octopus might use trial and error, some of them might opt to break the larger cubes to get to the small one, okay? Talking about octopuses and cubes, okay? And then it says blank have noted how octopuses modify and improve the method over time, okay? So it looks like we're talking about the way that they're solving the puzzles and then the researcher identifying them, all right? So if you look over here, these opposite one can go right away. This is not an example of doing it. You're just continuing on in the same direction. So 29 is going to be answer choice D. No reason to put a pirate flag in there. Either it's together or opposite, or you just continue what you're talking about. D, 29. Problem number 30, razor blade, simple is best. Answer choice here, F, it's the shortest, clear and concise. Razor blade for 30. Problem number 31, it's a commas problem. Chances are, if you got this wrong, you probably chose answer choice C, so let's start with that one first. You're going to notice here that you're going to see a performance and artist, and you're thinking Mr. Chung. So if you read this, okay, blah, 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 and you cross that out, it's still an independent clause. It's true, you're right. But remember, Mr. Chung asks you, when we cross out information, why can we cross it out? Why? It's non-essential information, all right? So you got to ask yourself, is this non-essential information? Do we need to know that performances are done by artists? Yes or no? In this case, we do need it in there, okay? Usually, you never put names in between the comma splices, so be aware of that. Remember, only put comma stuff like this. It's going to be non-essential information that you could cross out, but it does still give you a little mini definition of that word that's right before it. Okay, in this case here, this is essential information, so you cannot choose C as the right answer. All right, now what I do over here is I come over and I look at the beginning of the sentence here, and I'll just take a look at the correct answer. Okay, we're going to go from here to here, and let's put a comma in here. Okay, and then now we're going to go ahead and read and label. In her sand animation performances, dependent clause, artist Ilyan Yahav tells stories through a series of images she creates by operating a layer of sand on glass surface. That's the correct answer. Okay. Just for fun, we'll go through the process of pruning. Pruning tells you that you can cross out non-essential information pieces that come in the form of dependent clauses on the front, back, in the middle, or mummy wedges. For me, I'm going to start at the period here and go to the left. Here you see on a glass, on is a mummy wedge, cross it out. Okay. In her sand animation performances, that's a dependent clause, we can cross that out. All right, it says here in our independent clause, artist Ilyan Yahav tells stories through a series of images she creates by operating a layer of sand. Okay, that's still an independent clause when we do that. Here's another mummy wedge, where that can be crossed out. Series of images she creates by operating a layer. Okay, good. Now, by, the bumblebee flies by the bottle. So this is also a mummy wedge that can be crossed out. Artist Ilyan tells stories through a series of images she creates. Still independent. If we wanted to go further, we could go ahead and cross this out of images she creates. Artist Ilyan Yahav tells stories through a series. Okay, that's still an independent clause. We pruned it out, made the sentence a little bit shorter, easier to read. Bottom line comes down to this, 31A. Problem number 32, we're going to go ahead and use our ears, see which one sounds the best, but we're going to get rid of a bunch of non-essential junk to reduce the sentence to make it smaller. We call this pruning. Okay, the correct answer for problem number 31 is A. All right, so we'll pop that in there. Then we read and cross out dependent clauses at the front, back, the middle, and mummy wedges. In her sand animation performance, we get that out of there. Okay, then we go of images she creates. Okay, and then it says on a glass surface. Okay, artist Ilyan Yahav tells stories through a series by operating a layer of sand, by manipulating a layer of sand, by leveraging a layer of sand, or contriving a layer of sand. Plug in your answer choices after you reduce this down. You're going to see here she's got a layer of sand. And what are you going to do with a layer of sand? Are you going to operate a layer of sand, manipulate sand, leverage the sand, or contriving sand? Manipulate the sand. When you see the sentence is shorter, it's so much easier for you to find. Here, manipulating, or these are verbs. And what are you doing? Sand is going to be our noun. Easy. Prune for 32G. Problem number 33, formula B, anti-razor blade. You want to find the noun Yana, and she's going to create art, okay? Which one gives you specifically that, okay? Is telling a story, creating art. Here's our verb, creating. So telling a story, performance, using your hands, or works. Which one specifically shows she creates art? She creates art with her hands. Answer choice C. Formula B, anti-razor blade. Problem number 34 is the pig's rule along with pruning. So the pig's rule, P-I-G-S, okay? P goes to S, plural to singular, or singular goes to plural. That's the pig's rule, all right? We're going to locate the noun and the verb and make sure that they're mismatched, okay? Here's the situation. This is Mr. Chung, comma splice. So that can be taken out with the pruning technique, okay? So now we see that we have images. That's going to be our noun. Images is plural. So pig's rule tells us that our verb has to be singular, okay? So that means that's going to be out for 34. And here starts to appear or appearing. Here razor blade 34 is going to be answer choice F. If you got this wrong, it's the pig's rule. Probably you took answer choice J. 34F. Problem number 35, if you look over here, first thing I do is I glance at my answer choices. I see that we have a comma on the word and. That's a fanboys. You're going to have an independent, comma, your fanboys in this box, and then another independent. Right away, I see other small objects. That's a dependent clause, so anything dealing with a comma in the word and is a fanboys violation. Answer choice A is out. You're going to see that there's another fanboys violation here in C. Okay. Now, the second thing I look at, once I get rid of that, B is over here. There's the word, a comma on the word two. Two is going to be our mummy wedge. So you never put a mummy wedge about 90% of the time. You never put a mummy wedge with a comma. So you see that's a mummy wedge violation on that one. So 35 is going to be D. Problem number 36 is called a combo problem. When I come over here, I glance at my answer choices and I see there's a bunch of stuff in here. So I check G first. I see one dash. Now, Mr. Chung tells us that we want to match. Mr. Chung says 2 commas, 2 dashes, or 2 parentheses. Mr. Chung is not winking, so that means that if you're going to use one dash and you're going to use that splice, you're going to use a second dash. So this is called mismatch, Mr. Chung, dashes and commas, okay? So let's cross that one out. Second thing I do is I come over here and I see that in answer choice H, there's a comma in the word or. That's a fanboys. So fanboys, once again, independent. You're going to have a comma. In the box, you will have a fanboys, for and nor, but, or, yet, or so. Or is one of the fanboys. And then on the back end, you're going to have an independent clause. So here, we're going to read from or a snowfall, she dusts sand onto the blah, 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 blah. That's a dependent clause, so that doesn't work, okay? Then what we're going to do is problem number 36, we're going to take a look at down on the bottom, and you see in answer choice J, there's a comma after images, so we trace that in, all right? Now we're going to read from the beginning of the sentence and label it. When she wants to create less defined images, that's a dependent clause, okay? And then it says, such as the trees, the snowfall, she dusts off. That's a dependent clause. That violates abandoned boxcar. Somewhere in there, you got to have an independent clause, okay? One comma has got to have an independent clause. Dependent comma independent or independent comma dependent cannot have two dependent clauses. That violates that. Answer choice F is the correct answer for 36. Problem 37 is a dot comma. Remember, a dot comma, you're going to have an independent clause on both sides. They're two independent clauses that are related. Professor Thomas likes black, Jimmy likes blue. Black and blue are related. They're both independent clauses, all right? So here, if you look, there is a dot comma here. Yanov's hands move fluidly. That's independent right here. And then now the back part here, there's a problem because that's a dependent clause. We can cross that one out, okay? Here, answer choice B, since this is going to be they do not pause while a story is being told, that's an independent. And you don't want to put two independents connected together by a comma. That's a comma violation on that one, all right? A dot comma here, you're going to see independent, and then they do not pause while the story is being told. C is the correct answer. Dot comma, remember, two independent clauses that are related. Problem number 38 is a pig's rule. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one more time here. Pig's rule is going to match the subject and the verb together, but they're going to be opposite. P-I-G-S. P goes to S and S goes to P. That's how you remember the pig's rule. Plural to singular and singular to plural. Okay? So if I say the pigs, that's plural. Make is singular. Pigs make. The pig makes. Pig is singular and makes is going to be plural. Remember, subject-verb agreement is opposite of each other. Okay, now here's the problem with this. We're going to use a little bit of pruning, and you're going to see a very strange, unusual mummy wedge. Okay, here you have our verb, and we have to try and find the noun. So this italicized quote can be crossed out using the pruning technique. Okay, and then during, this is actually a very funny mummy wedge. So during Yanov's 4 times story, okay? So here it is. This is the noun right here, all right? So scenes illustrates. See how that doesn't match? It's got to be opposite. Scenes illustrate. Right away you can cross out boom, boom, and then it's much or many. Just simply use your ears. For 38, you're going to see that J sounds a little bit better. This is a very, very uncommon, strange mummy wedge. However, it still does separate the noun away from the verb. Remember, mummy wedges are non-essential bits of information that separate the noun away from the verb. That's why we call them wedges, mummy wedges. Problem 42, when you glance at your answer choices down here, this is going to be structural clues. First thing you want to do is go ahead and label it together or opposite. Still, it's going to be opposite. Consequently is going to be together, so it's a consequence. Nevertheless is opposite, and finally is going to be together. Now, what I do is I just take a look at where I'm at. Here's 42. And then I go back to the first sentence up here. It says next. Next and finally. It's like steps in the procedure. 42 is J. Problem 43 here, we're going to go ahead and take this underlined portion here, and we're going to kind of just rearrange it to see which one it sounds better with, okay? So I'm always looking for commas, or I'm always looking for mummy wedges, okay? Here in the answer underlined portion, we have the word at, so that's a mummy wedge. Whatever we have is going to define the word right before it, okay? So at once, does that give you more information about adding? No. All right, hands. Here it is right here. You put it right there. So at once, is that giving you more information about how you flick your hands? You have hands, 2 hands, and they're both at once at the same time. That's the answer on that one. Just remember, when you see the underlined portion and you see a mummy wedge like that, that helps you understand the definition of the word that's right before it. Flicking both hands at once, because that's going to give you more information, like a mini definition. 43, it's going to be B. Problem 44, formula B here, which of the following statements, if you add it here, would provide a transition between the preceding sentence and the last sentence? All right, here's 44 right here. Preceding sentence here, it says Yanov plans to memorize each frame of her story, outlining the scenes in a storyboard form like filmmakers. Okay, so you got a storyboard just like a filmmaker, and then now on the other side here, I only use my hands and my fingers. So obviously that's different than storyboarding, because this is a physical thing you do with your hands. So we're going to need a pirate flag in there. So if you look at your answer choices, which one has a pirate flag? You've got the word though here in F, answer choice G, answer choice H, and so we can cross that one out. There's no pirate flag in there. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to try and put something in there that's going to flip between hardcore filmmaking and then just being messing around with your fingers. Okay, here, though Yanov uses sand to create images of glass, she likens her art to dancing. Dancing, that's off topic. We can get rid of that. Okay, G, as Yanov tells stories to the glass, though images she creates overlaps eventually and erases them. Racism. That doesn't make any sense. Unlike filmmakers, though, Yanov keeps her audience memorized without using complicated digital images. In fact, she uses her hands. That's uncomplicated. H is the correct answer on that one. 44, H. Problem number 45, it's a Formula B rearranger. It says the writer is considering adding this sentence. She might toss a fistful of sand across the glass. Here I notice I see the word fistful, okay? So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and look for something that relates to a fist. Let's go into the passage, look in paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4, and see where they talk about sand in your fist. Okay, we'll zap on back here and take a look at that. All right, so here is A. Does it say anything about your hands and sand? She works with glass underneath, forms the project large. Viewers must watch the story. Okay, not really. All right, let's take a look at B. And B is right here. Okay, Yana's hands, there we go. Okay, move fluidly while the story is being told. Here we are going to put it in there. Fistful of sand and hands. You can see that we've got shakes of her hand and hands right there. That's going to be answer choice B for 45. Problem number 46, a razor blade, most important rule on the test. Check short answers first. J is the correct answer for problem 46. 47, when you look over here, you glance at your answers, you see that this is a structural clue problem. Step 1 is to label T together or O opposite. No change has the word further, that's going to be together. B is together, consequence. And answer choice C instead is going to be opposite along with still. Two togethers, two opposites. Now what we do is we go in here and find what we're talking about. I regarded skeptically, okay, and then down over here I took her word for it. Okay, when you're skeptical but you take your word, that's going to be opposite. So answer choice A and B can both be crossed out. Okay, instead or still sounds a little bit better. D. All right, problem 48 is a little tricky. So first thing I do is I just kind of glance at the answers. Viewing, one can view, a view of, and delete. All right. Second thing I do is I trace in my punctuation. There's a comma after supposedly, and here's a comma that you might not have saw after volcano. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to read and label it. Supposedly, that's dependent. Pruning technique tells us that we can cross out dependent clauses on the front most of the time. So we do that, and then now it says a view of the most beautiful sunrise in the world, the summit of the dormant volcano, okay? And then down over here it says 10,000 feet above sea level. That's dependent, all right? Since this is dependent down here, I know that I can prune this off. What I have here to here must be an independent clause, right? So right away, if I just cross this off, it says the most beautiful sunrise in the world, the summit of a dormant volcano. If you're a kid that read that and you're not sure if that's independent or dependent, what you could do is you could prune it further. Here's a mummy wedge, the word of the dormant volcano. We can cross that out because that is non-essential information. A view of the most beautiful sunrise in the world from the summit. Okay, what's a view? There's no noun. You see how that became a little bit more clear? Let's say that you didn't see it. Here's another mummy wedge. Okay, so from the summit, you could cross that out. A view of the most beautiful sunrise in the world. Okay, so you can see that. Let's say that you still have some problems. Here's another mummy wedge you could prune out in the world. Okay, a view of the most beautiful sunrise. Okay, so now right away you can see that this is a dependent clause. If we're going to use this answer choice, that makes it a dependent when we need an independent. If you use answer choice J, it says the most beautiful sunrise. Okay, there's no noun or verb in there. That's not a complete sentence. Okay, here it says viewing the most beautiful sunrise. Okay, what's viewing? It says one can view. All right, there we go. G is the correct answer. You saw how I answered this question. I underlined and traced in my punctuation in the non-underlined portion, and then I pruned out all of this garbage with mummy wedges and dependent clauses, and then just kept going. I made it really short. I finally pruned it down just to maybe 6 words, and I plugged in my answer choices to see which one made the most sense. 48, pruning technique. Problem 49, there's a gazillion commas when you glance at your answer choices here. So you see this is a tough problem. Watch how easy we make this, okay? You glance and see there's commas everywhere, commas here, commas there. Now, what you do is you go over to the sentence. Here's the beginning of the sentence, starting with tourists, and it goes all the way down here until early morning. All right, now look in here for a non-underlined portion stuff that's got punctuation. See it right here? Drive. There's one comma in there. Now, I'm going to read from the beginning and stop at that comma. I'm thinking if there's one comma, it's abandoned boxcar. You have to have an independent and you have to have a dependent. Tourists and locals alike make the arduous 38-mile drive. That's an independent clause. Cheerfully navigating the hairpin turns in the hours of the morning. That is a mini definition of the drive, and it's a dependent clause. That's going to lead you to answer choice A. All right. Remember, look at your sentence and then trace in your non-underlined portion and start labeling it independent and dependent. Problem 50, Formula B, anti-razor blade. Which one is the most effective illustration of the drive up the volcano? Anti-razor blade. Make it as specific as possible so you can see it. Is well-traveled road, is that going up a volcano? No. Steep, there you go. And tangly road, that's looming, that's going up. G is the correct answer. Remember, you're going to try and build up the noun and the verb. Problem 51, first thing you want to do, you glance at your answers, okay? Then you go ahead and trace in your punctuation. There's a comma here and, oh, dot comma. Remember the definition of a dot comma? Two independent clauses. So let's go ahead and now read. Once we reached the summit and parked the car, my misgivings were compounded by the shocking cold. That's an independent clause, all right? Whatever you put on the back end here now has to be an independent clause because this is not part of the underlined portion. So you're going to have an independent, all right? So that means if you cross this out, being, that's not an independent. That would make that a dependent. And then being here, that's going to be crossed out as well, okay? Because it was at most 40 or it was, okay? Both of these do work. The answer choice is short, simple, razor blade, C for 51. Problem 52, first thing I do is glance at the answers. I see that in answer choice G there's a comma and no change, there's a comma after gathered. Second thing I do is find the beginning of the sentence, about, and then the end of the sentence over here after edge, okay? Quickly glance in here. Are there any other commas or any other punctuation like dot comma? Nope. Good. All right, so I'm going to start with one comma, abandoned boxcar. All right, so now it's time to trace in that comma and then read from the beginning about all the way to gathered, stop, and then label it independent or dependent, okay? About 100 people had already gathered. That's an independent clause, okay? A guardrail is the only thing that separated them from the crater's edge. That's a dependent clause, okay? You see that that is abandoned boxcar. That's exactly what we want to have, okay? Now you see that this one has the same thing, all right? So I know right away that that works abandoned boxcar. So here's what we have. We have one word, a guard rail, that's 3 words, or a guard rail was 4 words. 4 versus 3, pretty easy. Razor blade, less is better. Make sure that you read both of them, and if they both sound okay, go with the shortest answer. 52, the correct answer on this one is going to be F. Problem 53, perfect opportunity to talk about razor blade versus anti-razor blade. So remember, anti-razor blade is going to be for rhetorical skills. Those are long questions. Anti-razor blade means we want to make it more specific and more details, make it bigger, longer. Razor blade is just for short questions. That's in the mechanics and usage. Here, this question has a question stem and is long. This is going to be a rhetorical skill question. So the answer here, we're going to want to make longer, not shorter. You see how the original choice here is longer, and here they're trying to shorten it. So we don't want to do that. Anti-razor blade, so we're going to go ahead and cross out A and B, all right? No, because it presents the narrator's opinion instead of factual, or it's less clear. D, anti-razor blade. Remember, longer choices are better when dealing with rhetorical skills. Problem 54, it's razor blade. Short answer choices are best. 54 is going to give you answer choice G. Problem number 55, it's the it's rule. This means it is. This is no such thing, so that can be crossed out right away. And this is singular animal or object with possession. This is itself, okay? So let's go ahead and read and plug in it is. The sun, it is on its way. That doesn't work, okay? And so it's going to be answer choice A for problem 55. Problem 56, once again, razor blade, short answer choices are preferential. 56 is J. 57, once again, it's razor blade. Razor blade says shortest answer choice, usually going to be the better choice. Answer choice A is too long. Answer choice B is too long. And then it says shoulder to shoulder or close and observed. Read, see which one sounds a little bit better. 57, you're going to see answer choice C is the best. Problem 58, first thing you want to do, look at your answer choices here. You're going to see that there's an ED here, and then there's lit. So this is past, present, future. It's a tense problem, okay? So what you do is look in the non-underlined portion, okay? We observers stood ascending, okay? So this is going to be present tense right here. We're going to try and match it. Aligned, ED, that's past tense. So is H, past tense. And over here, casted, that's past tense here. This is going to be the correct answer. It's going to match the tenses. 58J. Problem 59, Formula B, rearranger. You're going to take a new little sentence here. Suddenly, I didn't feel so tired. You're going to throw it into the passage in paragraph 1, 2, 3, or 4 at the points that they tell you, A through D, and you're going to see what makes logical sense. So what do I do in these situations? First thing I do is I read the sentence, and then I use the genius brain. Who, what, where, when, why, how. I didn't feel so tired and cold, okay? So why? What happened to make me all of a sudden change from being tired and being cold? What happened? All right. So now you just simply go in and look at point A, point B, point C, point D. Here, if you take a look, it says right here at point D, I was simply grateful to be there for the moment watching the new day, okay? The sentence just above that, it says, the ascending sun rose and cast a blush on the clouds below, all right? So when you see the sun coming out and it's golden, that's going to warm you up, and also that's going to give you kind of some vibrant energy to continue on doing what you're doing. In this case, answer choice D for problem 59. Remember, use the genius brain. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Hey, now I am not tired or cold. How come? What happened? Problem 60, Formula A, what you do here is think about the genius map, the big picture, and the title. Step number 1 is to get to the good stuff. That means the first clause and the last clause we can cross out, because it's basically the same on every one of these supposed questions. Suppose the writer's primary purpose had been to explain how, and would this essay accomplish that purpose, all right? Both of these sentences can always be crossed out in a supposed question. Now you can see the gist of the question more easily. This is a technique we use called pruning in English earlier, all right? So we've got Mount Halakha became a popular tourist destination. So we have the mountain and becoming popular for tourists. What you simply do now is you go back, you look at the title, you look at each paragraph, topic, sentence, and you see, is this really about the mountain being a tourist population? Go look at the title. The title says House of the Sun. Is that about tourists? No. Paragraph 1, it says, I had to drag myself out of bed to see the sunrise. Is that about tourists? Not really. Paragraph 2, supposedly a view from the most beautiful sunrise in the world at the summit of the dormant volcano. Doesn't really mention anything about tourists. Paragraph number 3, once we reached the summit and we parked our car, still no mention of tourists at all. Then we go down, it says at exactly 5:57, the sun made it over the clouds and so forth. You can see it doesn't mention anything about becoming a popular tourist destination. So you can go ahead and you can cross out the yeses. Now, simply look at the remaining answer choices and see what's going on. So we have the sunrise, top of the volcano, or no, because instead it focuses on tourism. There's no mention of tourism in there at all. Correct answer here is going to be H for 60. Remember, cross out the first clause and the last clause to get to what we call the good stuff, the noun and the verb. Problem 61, pretty easy. Razor blade, number 1 rule on ACT, short and simple. D is the correct answer. It's the shortest answer. All the other stuff here is just extra information that we don't need. Problem 62, here it says the writer wants to indicate that other people, right, have attempted to parachute from this Paris location, okay? This is a Formula B anti-razor blade. So think, other people, how are we going to show that other people have tried, attempted? You see, that's our verb, okay? So here, first time, no, delete, and ever, successful. So maybe people have tried They've attempted it, but they were unsuccessful. So this is the first time it was successfully completed. Answer choice G for 62. Problem 63, first thing I do is I glance at the answer choices and I notice that I see the word however. That's a pirate flag, and that reminds me of the rule called Cran's Island. Remember, these types of words are structural clues that are isolated on Cran's Island. That means there's going to be a comma before and a comma after. So I look over here and no change. There's no comma before there. That can be crossed out because of Cran's Island. And then down over here, you see there's no comma. Cran's Island violations for A and C. Now, you see here is Cran's Island. This word is isolated on a little island. So answer choice B and D are both in there so far. Then what I look and I see over here in D, there's a comma here. So that tells me this is Mr. Chung. Mr. Chung says we can cross out what's between commas because it's non-essential. Here there is no comma. So you have to ask yourself, is this relevant? Can you cross this out? Okay? So when you read the sentence here, is it still makes sense when you get rid of Italian artists? Okay? About 300 years before Garnier designed his parachute. However, Leonardo had sketched a similar blah, 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 blah. It is important. We do need to know that Leonardo was an Italian artist, so it's non-crossable. You cannot cross that out because it's important to know that Leonardo was an Italian artist. Okay, that's the gist of the whole thing. He's an inventor, but also he's a very famous artist. That's essential information, and you cannot put essential information between commas or comma splices with Chung. Remember, Chung tells you you can put stuff between commas because you can cross it out. It's non-essential. B is the correct answer on that one. Looking at 64, quite easy. It's simple as best. Razor blade 64 is going to be J. Problem number 65 here, it's a Formula B question, but let's try and figure out which one it is. Given all these choices are accurate, which most effectively leads the reader into the rest of the essay? Where are we? 65, here it is right here. And now we have to read and link these two sentences back together. This is called a gap filler. So what you want to do is you want to find the nouns and the verbs. Okay, so here's Leonardo, that's our noun, and he's got ideas. Okay, so this is our verb. Let's just call it a verb, okay? Then it says we've got the parachute today, and here we've got Leonardo again, and we've got the design, okay? Our verb, okay? So we have to somehow fill the gap in between the idea and the design, all right? So what's going to fill the gap in there? Over here, it's the invention, all right? So he's got an idea, he makes an invention, and then he has to manipulate the design of the invention. The answer on this one for 65 is going to be D. 66 is called a hazy rule. Here, if you look at these words are very hazy. They're not very specific. These things are so cool, hazy, okay? Man, those guys are crazy. Who's those, okay? And they went over there. See how it's too hazy? G is the correct answer on that one. Stay away from hazy pronouns, kids. Problem number 67, it's a tricky problem that involves getting the right answer on problem 65. It says here, if the writer were to delete the preceding sentence, what would this lose? Okay, so the preceding sentence here is Leonardo himself never actually built the parachute. Okay, so that is the sentence inside the paragraph. So inside the paragraph here, it's the last sentence in our paragraph, so you've got to go back to the previous page on page 11 and look at the topic sentence. Now, that's the problem, because problem number 65 is replacing the topic sentence. And remember, from problem 65, we chose answer choice D. It says his invention was allowing someone to enable them to jump from greater heights without getting injured. Okay, that's our topic sentence. So if you choose D for 65, you see that we have an invention for jumping from heights. You're going to see that in 67. What does it do? It's going to clarify Leonardo's parachute. That's theoretical, okay? So C is the correct answer for 67, which kind of builds off of getting the correct answer in 65. Problem 68, when you glance at your answer choices here, it's a combo problem. So first of all, answer choice F, no change. It looks like there's a dot comma, and G, there's a dot comma, all right? Dot comma is going to be two independent clauses, two sentences on each side. That's the number one 90% of the rule, and these sentences can be linked together because they're related. Professor Thomas likes black, Emily likes blue. Black and blue are colors, okay? Then you see that you've got Mr. Chung, 1 dash, that's going to be the same as a comma, and then there's nothing there. So first of all, what you do is you check these two at the same time, F and G. In the beginning, it says the finished parachute weighed 187 pounds. That's an independent clause, okay? And then it says about 172, blah, blah, blah. That's dependent, okay? That's not going to work for F, no change. And then here it says which is 172 pounds. That's a dependent clause. So here, answer choice F and G have independent, dot comma, and then they have a dependent. That violates the dot comma rule, okay? Now, when you come over here, you take a look at answer choice H. That is the same thing as what we see with Mr. Chung, okay? Keep in mind that Mr. Chung is independent, comma, dependent, or it could be independent dash dependent. The dependent clause is going to give you a mini definition of the word right before it. Here, about 172, that gives you more information about the previous bits of information. The correct answer on this one for 68 is going to be answer choice H. Going on to problem 69. 69 is called the ITS rule. Remember, this is stuff you have to memorize. Answer choice A, no change, is IT apostrophe S. That's it is. Because of it is weight, that doesn't sound right. Remember, whenever you see IT apostrophe S, just say it is. Then over here, ITS with the apostrophe on the outside, that's no such thing. That's misunderstanding and getting confused with the PUPS rule. All right, and then here is there, that's a place. And here is singular possessive. So are they talking about a place or something that is singular possessive? What are we talking about? We're talking about the parachute and the parachute's weight. You're going to see that 69 is going to be answer choice D. All right, problem number 70 is a tricky one here. This is a not problem, so the first thing you have to do is make sure that you circle the word not. That means that of the 4 answer choices, there's going to be 3 of them that are used correctly. We're looking for the one that's not correct, all right? Here you're going to notice that in 70 there is no option that says no change. That means that what you see here is going to be used correctly. All right, so here's what I do. First thing I do is I know I'm in for a little bit more work, so I just buckle in. And then I see the beginning of the sentence is up here, and the end of this sentence is down over here. Okay? Now, the second thing I would do after that is I trace in my punctuation. I try and prune it, okay? So here we are. I trace the comma in after weight. It says because of its weight, that's a dependent clause. So pruning technique tells you you can cross out stuff that's dependent clause on the front, okay? And what we know is the rest of the sentence has to be an independent clause. Nicholas had to cut himself free near the end of the jump and deploy his parachute. You see how that's an independent clause, but it's shorter when you get rid of this monkey business off the front end of the sentence. That's called pruning, okay? So that's used correctly. Let's keep that off there. Now, you're going to come over here and we're going to see that we have the word that. If you don't know this rule, this is an advanced Mr. Chung. So let's go ahead and draw Mr. Chung's face, okay? So Mr. Chung looks like this. He's got 2 dashes for eyes. He's got 2 commas for his nose. He's got his mouth, which are brackets or parentheses. But also, you'll notice that Mr. Chung has a movie star chin, the cleft chin. It looks like a W, okay? So what you have to acknowledge is if you come over here from the tip of Mr. Chung's chin, the middle of the chin, I'm going to put a dot there. Let's say I draw a dot straight up from the middle of his chin right here. You see that from the middle of his chin, which is a W, it falls in between the dashes, the commas, and the brackets, right? Okay? It falls right in the middle here. So what is in the middle of dashes, brackets, and commas? It's non-essential information, okay? So here's the rule when you see his face. We have the word which versus the word that. This is a very difficult rule. This is called restrictive and non-restrictive clauses. We're going to make it as simple as possible with Chung. We know that when you look at Mr. Chung, his chin looks like a W, and if you were to put your finger and trace a line straight up from the tip of the middle of the W, it would fall into the middle area, which is non-essential info. So that means when you use the word which is going to fall in between the area that's non-essential, okay? So when you use the word which, it's going to be between commas, or it's going to be in the dependent clause at the end, or it's going to be in between those commas, as we said before, okay? The word that is going to be essential, so you never put the word that in areas you can cross out. So you don't want to put the word that in the area between the commas, which is non-essential. Why? Because the word that tells you what you're going to say is essential. You cannot cross it out. If you cross it out, it's going to fall apart. The sentence won't be a full sentence, okay? So, which, non-essential, that is essential. Do not put the word that between commas, and do not put the word that at the end of the sentence in the essential, non-essential part. Make sense? All right, so if you look over here, you're going to see that if you put the word that right here after jump, you have to check and see, is this stuff crossable? Because if you could knock all of that out to the end of the sentence and the sentence falls apart, then you could put it there because it's essential. If you cross it out and the sentence is still complete, then you just crossed out non-essential info. So let's try it. We're going to go ahead and cross out that deployed all the way to the end of the sentence, okay, and see what's left. Nicholas had to cut himself free near the end of the jump. That's an independent clause. So if you put the word that there and you were to cross it out, if it really is essential, then you would have a clause that falls apart and becomes a dependent clause. That's not the case. So the correct answer here that's not going to work is the answer G. It is a very confusing rule. Let's review it very fast. Remember, if you're debating on between using the word which and the word that, the word which will fall in between commas that can be crossed out, or the word which will fall in the dependent clause at the end of the sentence. Do not put the word that in non-essential areas, because the word that is essential, and if you cross out that all the way to the end of the period or in between the commas, the sentence theoretically should fall apart because that is essential. 70, the correct answer is G. Problem 71, when you glance at the answers, it's a structural clues problem. So that means you're going to have to look, here's your underlined portion, you're going to have to look at the clause before and after and see the relationship here, okay? First thing I do is I label the answer choices T together or O opposite. That's kind of referring back to the good stinky rule. So if you have two negative clauses, then you would say that's together. If you have a negative and a positive or vice versa, that would be opposite, okay? Remember, positive, positive or negative, negative doesn't matter. Those are still going to be going in the same direction together. Just think of the good stinky rule and matching it, all right? Still, that's going to be opposite. Coincidentally, that's going to be together. Likewise, will be opposite, and again is going to be together, all right? Now what we have to do is, here is the underlined portion. You have to look and see, are these words going together or opposite? You're going to cut yourself free. So if you have to cut yourself free, that's going to be negative because probably the parachute didn't work, okay? And then here it says could slow the parachute descent. Okay, so negative, you had to cut yourself free because it didn't work quite right. And here it did slow it down, so that's going to be positive. So right away for this particular problem, you're going to know that we're going to have to use the word that's opposite. You see plus and minus, so that means the togethers are going to go out. Okay, and again, that's out, and still is, excuse me, coincidentally, all right? Likewise, or still, then read it and see which one sounds a little bit better. You're going to see that answer choice A, still, was able to slow himself down, so A, 71. Don't listen to what I say, watch what I do. It's the same procedure as you go through. 71, A. 72, if you got this one wrong, this is a Formula B rearranger. What you want to do is you want to look at sentence number 2. Okay, let's find it. It's important that you see here is sentence 1, and it's the sentence that goes to the right. Okay, so where's sentence 2? Here. So what I do, I focus on the noun and the verb. Okay, so here, parachute, that's our noun, and what happened? It's finished. It's our verb or zerb, okay? And then now what you do is you come over here and try and figure out where you're going to do it. All right, here's sentence 3 going this direction. We have the noun parachute, and what's happening? It's constructed, all right? So here we have finished. So what happens first? First, you construct the parachute, and then when you're done constructing it, you're finished. The correct answer on this one is going to be after sentence 3. Remember, see what I do? It's just basic identify the noun and then the verb or zerb. Zerb, once again, is what the main noun is doing. Answer choice H for 72. 73 is a Formula B question. Here they're going to add this new part of the sentence into our paragraph right here. And so, of course, what you have to do is you have to take a look at your topic sentence and see if it's on topic, okay? So here it's performing the jump in a certain location. The topic sentence says here, we have this person, okay, and they're taking the original concept of Leonardo, okay, and they're doing the construction, and then they're steering it, okay? So this is taking the construction, the concept, and then making it again and then trying to steer it. Do we need to know where the location is? It's off topic, so we don't want to put it in there. So let's get rid of those, okay? No, because it's unrelated to the technical information. Technical would be technical construction and technical inability to steer. The correct answer here is going to be C for problem 73. Formula B, remember when you're adding stuff, always glance at your topic sentence, identify the noun and the verb, and see if we're on topic or if we're going astray. 74 is a Mr. Chung rule. Remember, Mr. Chung, what's between dashes, commas, and brackets is non-essential information. You can cross it out and the sentence still holds its own. All right, first thing I do is I come over here, I check answer choice G. I go ahead and cross out and safely. All right, so here it is, double dash. And then I read and see if the sentence is still complete. When I do that, the pyramidal shape of the parachute allowed him to glide gracefully to the ground. G, Mr. Chung. And finally, problem number 75, I just kind of used my ears and I poked around and took a look at the sentence and found the nouns and the verbs. All right, so here it looks like the answer choices we've got until the last, at long last, long last. Here in the sentence, the noun is Leonardo, and what's happening? He's got a historic sketch. It's historic, okay? So historic at long last, that's going to match the best C on this one because of historic. All right, 75C. Kids, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.